Hi, Helena.
Hi, Adam.
And hi to all of our listeners. We've got a great and very fun episode for you today. But before we get into that, Helena, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Helena Dix. I'm an opera singer who works all around the world at various opera houses, causing mischief, chaos, and occasionally singing some whopper high notes. I'm a foodie, a dog lover, and I love to laugh.
And my name is Adam Miller. I'm a former opera singer turned producer, writer, and director. And Helena, you and I have had the great pleasure of working together in lots of different capacities over the years. Our episode today we recorded when you were back in Australia a good, or at least 6 months ago. And this episode is all about competitions, career battle hardening, and coping with criticism. We recorded this over lunch. If you listen all the way through to the end, you're going to hear Helena desperately trying to wrap up the episode so she can get back to her mother's famous pickle relish. If you want to hear that, then listen on. And we're back again. This week I'd be really interested to start the conversation around competition. Last year, you adjudicated the Herald Sun aria, and I'll get you in a moment to explain what the Herald Sun aria is to people who don't necessarily know what it is. And this year, you and I went and we saw it. People have really different opinions about competitive art, which I think is so interesting because I've run an Eisteddfod for a number of years, and so I've got a very specific perspective on that. I also grew up in the Eisteddfod circuit, so that the competitive...
That's where we met.
Exactly, that's where we met. I think everyone's going to find out soon enough. I'm an advocate. I believe in it. I think it's an important thing, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
On competitions as a whole? Or?
Well, no, competitive art. So Eisteddfods in general. At the Herald Sun aria, it's the world's longest running aria competition. We put, I think there was 60-odd competitors who came and did it this year through the Royal South Street Eisteddfod. And they went through heats and they went through semi-finals, and we got 6 fabulous, amazing singers getting up on stage, performing with an orchestra, some of them for the first time. But then we pit them against each other. An audience, from their perspective, they could be looking at it purely as a concert, but they're not. Because every time everybody sang, everyone would lean over to the person next to them and go, "Oh, yes." And everyone had an opinion.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's funny, Eisteddfods as a whole are primarily a Welsh thing originally. And
in fact, the plural of Eisteddfod is Eisteddfodal, if you really want to be posh and fancy about it.
I don't.
1 Eisteddfod, 2 Eisteddfodal. There you go.
Eisteddfodal. It sounds German.
You sound German.
It sounds like Frau. Eisteddfodal. But hey, that's for another episode. So competitive art. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, look, at the end of the day, art divides opinions anyway. And I always say to people, who's your favourite singer? Or tell me a singer that you really love. A singer that you've seen live, and the opinions, of course, are going to be different, but based on what? And that's the interesting thing, because when I hear a singer, I'm listening very much from a technical point of view. Obviously, my mother would listen to a singer and hear something completely different.
You came and adjudicated at the Burundara Eisteddfod, and I was literally sitting next to you for that. And I had wildly different opinions about the people that you chose. And I went, oh, okay, because I often look at performers as a producer. And so I go, oh, yeah.
You see them as a package.
Exactly. I'm like, great, I could market that. I could put that on a stage right now. I never think about it from a technical point of view. Like, I'm always thinking, because again, I'll forgive those every single time. I'm like, oh, yeah, technically there were some problems there, because I don't have to think about their long-term career. I don't have to think about what's appropriate. All I have to think about is, can I put bums on seats with that person on the stage? So it's so interesting you saying that about coming at it from a technical perspective.
I think what's really interesting is that you and I grew up in Eisteddfods and we competed against each other. And when you're a kid, like, what's the reason that you go in the Eisteddfods? And it's that even varies. Yeah. So for me, yes, it was great, like winning things and all that kind of thing. But for me, actually, what I enjoyed the most about going in competitions was the actual event itself. So having the nerve to get up in front of people, when you know that actually they're not just sitting there and enjoying what you're doing, but you've got a judge there who's writing down everything that they think about what you're doing. So actually you have to have quite the nerve to be able to get up and do that. Is it an artificial experience for a singer in the sense of the end goal being you get up in an opera and you're part of something much more immersive and bigger? Yeah, okay, so it is in some ways. But in your training, I believe that that's something that actually cuts Australians above a lot of other nationalities. And I've even met like a lot of colleagues around the world who say the one thing about Australian singers, they might be good, they might be bad, whatever your opinion of them is, but they've got guts. And I think a lot of us come from that Eisteddfod background.
So battle trained.
Yeah, we're kind of like, we're trained to get up. We're trained to be in an environment that's a little bit sterile in a sense of, I remember, some of the Eisteddfods back when we were growing up, competitor number 43, kind of get up on the stage.
And then announcing that you're going to be singing some Wagner.
Yeah, some Wagner.
Everyone loves a bit of Wagner.
You can let the bright seraphim. And there's not many people there and it's your folks or it's the other competitors like staring you down hoping that you choke, on your own saliva or something. And so it's an odd environment when you think about it, but a very helpful one, I think. And I have to say that I had varieties of opinions given to me by adjudicators, and I did them many, many years, as you know. Like a lot of us did the rounds. We would go around and do all the competitions. Maybe some people were doing it for money. Maybe some people were doing it for prizes. For me, it was the opinion of the adjudicator, and I'd want to know their thoughts and their constructive thoughts.
I definitely did it for money, but I waited till after you'd won everything and left. So when you'd kind of gone, right, I'm going professional, I'm leaving, I'm like, great, this is my chance to walk in and do it for money.
That's hilarious.
I had a great year of just going around doing competitions. It was the best.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
But I do think what outweighs all of our reasoning for doing it is the experience itself.
Yeah.
Because it's not great. You can create a lovely environment in a competition, but at the end of the day, the whole prospect of getting up and competing against your colleagues in the room, having to be your whatever you deem perfect in the situation. I think that's really difficult and not an easy thing to learn. But it does give you some kind of edge because now this is interesting. So you said as an audience member, everyone has an opinion.
Yep.
As a judge, I've got an opinion that's different to yours. I'm coming at it from maybe a different standpoint. But let's be honest with ourselves, right? When you go into opera singing and you're singing for casting directors around the world for different opera companies, it's just an opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not a great environment. So I spent the first half of my career traveling, singing for different opera intendants, singing for different musical directors in not a great environment. It's usually a little bit sterile. There's a little panel of people. So Eisteddfods create that thing for you at a very early age. They give you that chance to...
Audition training.
Yeah, audition training. Because let's face it, and I say this to young people all the time, you can walk away from an audition thinking, I took a breath in the wrong spot or my vowel wasn't perfect. I'm sorry. I would go as far as saying that 90% of the current casting directors in the world are not trained singers.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. As I run it through my head, yeah.
I know two, and I have to say the two that I do know make wonderful casting choices. But that's maybe because I agree with them because I come at it from a singer's point of view as well. And so that's a really interesting thing. And I say this to singers all the time. So the singer goes into an audition or into an Eisteddfod seeking perfection within themselves, vocally, technically. But who's the target? And then do you perform with the target in mind? I worked with quite a few of the Herald Sun ARIA finalists this year individually. I did some coaching with some of them. And I said exactly that to them. I said, you can spend all your time thinking about who the judges are and what you think they want to see, or you can just be true to yourself, but understand that it doesn't have to be perfect because everyone's looking for something different. And whilst they might pick one person, it doesn't mean you're not going to have a career. I mean, look at me. I was runner-up in the Herald Sun ARIA, and the year after I came in and got nothing. So I've done all right.
Yeah. Well, this is, I guess, going to lead on to one of the questions that I had within this topic as well. The people who win competitions don't always go on to have careers. And it's often the talk of the industry.
Sure.
Because some people are really, really good at that art form, at the audition, but they're not necessarily good at the profession. And I think there's something really interesting in that, because I remember that. I remember going along and seeing you in that competition and you didn't win that. It's gratifying then to see after all those years just going, yeah, then you walked into the industry and, have had this huge career.
And I think that's such an important thing for young people to remember. I'm fortunate in a lot of ways that I have had an upbringing from mum and from, influences around me. I'm quite a strong individual. So if someone tells me I can't have something or I'm not given something, it just annoys me and makes me want it more, rather than there are a lot of people who would give up and who would think, well, that's crushed my spirits. I'm not going to do it again. And I've seen it through the industry. I've seen people rise and fall all our lives. We've seen it with colleagues, people who make a great start and then maybe don't do so well, or people who at the beginning just fall because they're not strong enough to carry through or not strong enough to go away, or whatever it is that they decipher that is needed for them. And also it's that kind of thing of, well, not everyone is going to be a world-class soloist. And so you have to set your goals according to the reality of what you're capable of. And that doesn't just mean vocally for me. Like, it means in your person as well. Opera singing is a sport. We're Olympic athletes, but also it's not just about how you sing. I know a lot of people who sing well and haven't survived in the industry because they're not nice. Or actually, there's a lot of not nice people still in the industry. Or people who get in trouble within companies. And then you see it, as you said, there could be people who win all these competitions, go into a company and they think, oh, they've won this. They hire them, then never hire them again.
Yeah. So we're looking at different skill sets, really.
Absolutely different skill sets.
Some people are really good at the audition, really good at the Eisteddfod, but don't necessarily have the skills, the all-encompassing skills that you need from a performer, or even just the personality type to have that life. And, there are people like you who can do both, who have used that time to kind of battle harden. Yeah, which is really interesting and gives different perspectives and I guess different reasons for people doing it.
Absolutely.
And I like that idea that people come to it for different reasons. So some people might go in to win. They like that sense of competition. Other people go in because you need that plurality of feedback. It's really important because you can get really tunnel visioned working with a teacher on certain things, and you just need outside voices to go, oh, what about this? What about that? Yeah, so the different reasons of going in are really interesting as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just keeping a perspective on the reality of it. Some people get so focused on it. Their soul is destroyed if they don't win a competition. And I'm like, yeah, but life carries on.
Yeah.
The world
and you're
goes
not going
on
to get every audition. That's the best lesson to learn.
Absolutely.
If you don't, and that used to be the thing in my career as a singer, is that I used to always feel like if I didn't get that audition, that's fine. I'll get the next one, because whoever got that job can't take the next one. That's fine. I'll go for that. And there was something really nice about that. But again, I'd come up through that Eisteddfod circuit and was probably a little bit battle hardened that way.
I do definitely think we've got a benefit. We've got a skill set that maybe some other singers from other countries don't have from not experiencing that at a young age. I do think in Australia that's a wonderful thing, and I think it should be harnessed for many generations to come.
Yeah. I'd say as well, there's a sense of shared experience in people who have done competitive art, who have done Eisteddfods and things like that, and camaraderie, because I've made so many of my friends through that circuit. And I remember it might have been you. Now I'm trying to remember who said it, but it was again at the Burundara Eisteddfod. One of the adjudicators got up and said, "You should not be looking around this room today and thinking of the other people as your competitors. These are your colleagues. These are your future colleagues." And it's so absolutely true.
Unless they're all sopranos, in which case you can hate them as much as you like, and put eye drops in their water and all that kind of stuff.
Good.
Yeah, because you won't be colleagues with them. Maybe occasionally, but otherwise, you don't have to be particularly nice. Sopranos are a different.
Says someone who just did Soir Angelica with every single female singer in Melbourne.
And that's true. And I thought I would hate it. I genuinely, I thought, an all-female cast, no. But I have to say, something about the way that Melbourne Opera chose, or the feeling in the room, it was actually one of the most special feelings in the room I think I've experienced. There's something quite nourishing about just hearing female voices, and it was I really expected the experience to be remarkably different from what it was. But the young ladies that were all a part of that show were just so supportive of each other.
Oh, that's great.
And you don't get that very frequently.
No. There's a great adage that I heard at Scottish Opera, which is never cast anybody that you wouldn't want to tour with. And I've used that as a producer all my life. I've only cast people that I'm like, yep, I could put up with them on a 3-month tour. And I get the impression of your Soirée Angelica cast. It was that's a cast that you could tour with.
Absolutely.
There was a pause there. I like the fact that you actually thought about it.
No. I wasn't thinking about the individuals and how much I wouldn't like to tour with them. I literally, my brain just went, oh, traveling with a bunch of girls. Oh, having been a female who has 2 older brothers and most of my best mates are guys, it's just the way I've been brought up. And so, the whole kind of like all-girls school or all-girl thing makes me a bit uncomfortable.
So you're the person that wouldn't be toured with. So with that Scottish Opera adage, everyone else would be touring and you'd be like, no thanks, that's fine.
Much.
I'll just take myself out of that equation.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd be the one playing marbles in the back with the boys.
Or as I did actually on a Scottish Opera tour, was I learnt the ukulele on a tour. There's all kinds of things you can do on a tour.
I've been on tours, but never with all girls. That thought did make me shudder a little bit, but that's okay. They're all lovely. Not for personal reasons against them.
So coming back to your experience we know you were as an adjudicator, as a coach, but you did the Cardiff Singer of the World. Is that right?
I did.
I remember that really viscerally because I was living in London at the time and you were going through this. What was that experience like for you? Because it was a big step up at that time. You'd been singing at the Royal Academy of Music. You'd started that little step into your professional career, but this was a big international jump. What was that like for you? Do you look on it now as a net positive or a net negative experience?
A bit of both.
Okay.
But I think the negatives ended up giving me fuel to be better in the future. So I just graduated, literally, and I was at Glyndebourne for the summer, and then I had to do this audition. They auditioned a whole bunch of Aussies all around the world. I did my audition in London, and then I was the one that was chosen to represent Australia. It was a slightly surreal experience, to be honest. And I think, looking back on it, I think I was probably a bit young and maybe a little inexperienced. You can always look back though, can't you, and go, I think the Americans who came into the competition had been doing bigger things before they all kind of came in, and that shows itself. And I think that's why so many Americans do so well in that competition, because I feel like a lot of them get auditioned at the right time, whereas I can't remember. I actually can't remember who nominated me, but I think maybe some of the other countries nominate people. Yeah, they're good singers, but I'm not entirely sure that I was quite built for that at that time.
Yeah,
not because I couldn't sing. The singing part was actually the easy part.
Yeah,
it was all the.
It was a sideshow. It was
huge.
A
sideshow, and there's lots that goes on behind the scenes, and lots that's not so pretty.
Yeah.
And
was it more cutthroat? And again, I say this in the context of the Eisteddfods we have in Australia still are largely focused on being as supportive as possible for the artists. Did you get that impression when you were doing it? Was there a cutthroat atmosphere between competitors? Did you feel like you were?
No, and I think that the weird thing is the competitors are kept quite separate.
All right.
So there was never an attempt by the competition to kind of bring everyone together or, get everyone to know each other. And because you're coming from different countries a lot of the time and you're quite young predominantly, I mean, as I said, there were some older ones in there. Whereas when you get a bit older, you've met people around the world and you've worked with people. Whereas this was, I knew like 2 people, I think, in the entire competition. The singing part was fine. Even, it sounds silly, but now it's televised a lot more. Now it's really easily accessible for people to watch. Back when I was doing it, not so much. It was just starting. Internet just started to become a presence for the competition.
It was definitely on the BBC because I watched you on the BBC.
It was, but they never showed the entire thing.
That's right. It was highlights.
It was highlights.
Oh, I'd forgotten that.
And I can tell you, with my hand on my heart, it was not my highlights.
Right.
So, look, we could sit here and talk about it for a long time. But I remember thinking, those weren't the best parts of what I did.
Oh, wow.
Because I knew what I did best, and they certainly weren't. So who deciphers that, and why, and what do they show? I found that difficult.
Yeah, that's really challenging. It's always challenging being edited by someone else, but in that situation when it is competitive and you're trying to show yourself in the best light, yeah, that's really tough.
So I think that was difficult. There wasn't a lot of warmth. I mean, don't get me wrong, the administrators were lovely and all that kind of thing. But I was traveling up and down from Glyndebourne as well at the time because I had a contract with them. And so that became very tiring and difficult for me. And I just feel like, it didn't feel like a particularly, don't get me wrong, I didn't find the competitors particularly bitchy as such.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that happened. And we had this whole thing with the judges when we were done. And I'll never forget it. It was extraordinary, where all the people that didn't make the final had the option to go and speak to the adjudicators in a room. And they would have like 2 adjudicators per room or 3 sometimes. If they were buddies, they'd like team up together and you'd go and they'd be on different tables around the room and you'd go and speak to each one and you'd get your feedback from each judge. But you didn't have to, but you could if you wanted to. And of course you're going to want to. Like, I had some very big name judges in that competition.
People like, why don't you love me?
People like Marilyn Horne and people like that. So of course you're going to want to chat to them and see what they think. I get the feeling now, looking back on it, that the judges didn't particularly want to do that because there was not a great deal of care that was given at the time.
Okay.
So much so that I was in the hallway waiting to go into the final room, and one of the competitors came out before me who's now got a stonking career, and she was just in tears. And she said, that room is full of 4 men who are horrible. She said, brace yourself before you go in. And she was in floods of tears. So I thought, right.
So did you make them cry?
I didn't, but I was very proud of myself that they didn't make me cry, and they could have easily. And I just remember going, right, Helena, you got to gather everything you got because I don't want to be that person. And one of the judges had told the other 3 that obviously that he would be the spokesperson of the group. And I went in and he said to me, Helena Dix, Miss Australia. Well, he said, you're very confident, but all you Australians are. Very full of yourself, aren't you? Very full of your own worth. I'm thinking,
wow.
Okay. And I said, well, why not? I said, yeah, sure. I said, we're a happy bunch. I said, we don't carry chips on our shoulders. And he went, oh, and like his tail feathers were up straight away. So he started being quite derogatory to me, said a few things, and they were all sitting there and you got the sense looking back on it that they would have liked to have said something. And in fact, one of them eventually did. But then he said to me, I sang Ernani in Volami by Verdi. And he said, so you Mozart, this and that, and your Chopin, yeah. But your Verdi, he said, and he didn't have an Australian accent, by the way, but that's just the way.
Your Verdi.
I'm not going to give the accent away, but he said, but your Verdi, he said, well, your coloratura just was rubbish. And I said, do you? And I was ready, so I said, do you have a constructive way to tell me that? And he said, excuse me. And he said, and then he got really angry, and he said, well, you sounded like a chicken. And I said, right. So I said, in the dictionary of music, if I look up chicken, coloratura, I said, will it define how I get better at that? Or something. I said something along those lines. He did not like it. And he said, who do you think you are? And he got really aggressive with me. And then one of the men, I can't remember where he was from, but he was from one of the opera houses in Europe. And he said, I can't sit here anymore. He said, I've had enough of this. And he actually turned to the man and he said, can you just calm down? Like, I know you told us not to speak, but this is absolutely outrageous. And then he turned to me and he said, Helena, for your voice type, you're still very young, but you do beautiful artistry. And I'm really looking forward to following your career, and come and audition for me in a few years, once you've had a bit of stage experience, because obviously I was straight out of college. Yeah. And he said, I'm so sorry for my colleague. And then they started arguing.
Oh my God.
He said, I think you should go now. He said, because he said, he's got nothing helpful to offer you. And I just thought, oh my goodness. And looking back on it, having now been an adjudicator myself, I just don't understand. I really don't, because, I remember with the Herald Sun Aria last year, and even adjudicating for you at Burundara, and I've done all kinds of things like this. I feel so much weight on my shoulders as a working professional to be kind and helpful.
Yes.
And the mentality behind that. And yet that man it's still casting and it's extraordinary. But it's a good tale for anyone who's listening, because you can't control those people. You can't change those people's opinion about you. And if they've got a chip on their shoulder, it's probably not even to do with you. It's to do with he just wanted to be powerful. He made The Girl Before Me cry.
Yeah.
And she's an awesome singer and still is and has a wonderful career. And he was obviously out to destroy me as well. So, he's on his own, trajectory. But you, if you let that get to you, it will destroy you. And I'm not saying that the industry is full of it, because it's not, but there are people like that. But there are people like that in life.
Mm.
And as a singer, we don't have the benefit of being in one job with one boss or two jobs with two bosses where we can, feel it out. And we have so many different people, managers, directors, casting agents, and this is why I said to you earlier, it's not just about being a singer. You have to be able to manage people.
Yeah.
And that's difficult. And also to understand for yourself along the way that there's some people that you'll just never be able to get through to, or to, I remember early in my career, a few little hiccups when I first started working at the Met, and my husband said to me, babe, you can't please everyone. And I thought, well, okay, I want to though, of course. And every job feels like you want to. But it's not like you can be in an office for a couple of years and get to know the vibe of people. You have to go in and out and be able to deal with people who will not be kind, but also to deal with people who are awesome too. And that's life. But as singers, we go through a lot more of those people just because of the nature of the job.
Yeah. So I guess that was another example of that battle hardening for you. So
it was
along your career path, that was a test of fire.
It was a test of fire, and I didn't doubt myself in the sense of like, oh, I'm not good enough to be here. But I certainly, looking back, was one of the younger competitors and one of the less experienced competitors. But what I got out of it was holding my nerve and singing with a beautiful orchestra in a big hall with people who don't necessarily want you to do well. and so then when you actually get cast in an opera and you have people come and enjoy your singing and everything, the end result of that ends up being so sublimely wonderful after the battle that you've gone through to get there.
I think that's probably a good moment to take a pause, and we might wrap it up there.
And then I can have some more pickle.
And you can, yes, you can have some more pickle.